We're back. Welcome back to the Good Morning Show. OT, Proud, Early Bird, WBOK 1230 AM.
What New Orleans is talking about.
Thank you, Equity Media, man. African-American black media source, important here in America. And welcome to the Good Morning Show, man. Secretary of Labor, Pete Buttigieg. Pardon me? Secretary of Transportation. I'm sorry. Marty Walsh was just here, man. We've had so many federal officials visit our community. We had SBA Administrator Guzman, and now Transportation Secretary Buttigieg. Welcome to the Good Morning Show.
Well, thank you. That's good company. So I'm glad to be part of that streak.
Well, man, first of all, man, thank you. Thank the president and his cabinet. We have gotten more attention and more assistance just during this administration than we've seen in a long time. Secretary Buttigieg, first of all, for our listening audience, what is the purpose of your visit, and maybe a little of that information that you can share why it's important to us down here in southeastern Louisiana.
Well, today we're making an announcement about the largest investment that we have ever made in our port infrastructure development program. My department looks after all parts of the transportation system, from trains to aircraft. But one thing that is getting more and more attention in today's economy is our ports. And of course, this is something that nobody needs to tell residents of Louisiana about, just how important they are economically, how important they are to our supply chains, the jobs that they create. And even if you don't live anywhere near a port, you count on our ports in order to be able to get the goods that you count on, the clothes that you wear, the food on the table. And the truth is, we have not been investing enough as a country, really, in the last 40 years in America's ports. That's changing now, thanks to the president's leadership. We passed the law last year on a bipartisan basis. It's creating the funding to do this. And so today we are putting out $450 million in newly available grant funding for port-related projects. And I expect that this is going to make a big difference in Louisiana, as are our investments in roads, bridges, and every part of our infrastructure under the president's plan.
Secretary Buttigieg, let's stay there, especially with the expansion of the Panama Canal, with the disruption of the supply chain, and the importance of especially our port in the mouth of the Mississippi with the Mississippi tributary system. It reaches so much of Middle America and even some of the East Coast. There's been major disruption there. Talk about the administration's focus on that, as well as the infrastructure that has to happen so some of these supercargo containers can access that tributary system.
Well, that's right. These ships that you see now, the sheer size of them, these are not our parents' or grandparents' generation of vessels, and they often require specialized ports. They have to sometimes change the clearance of bridges just so that they can pass under them to get to certain parts of our transportation system and our ports network. And that's an example of the kind of improvement we might be able to fund with this initiative that we have right now. Most Americans don't think about how they get the products that they count on every day. But if you live anywhere near America's ports, as I know folks in so many parts of Louisiana know so well, you see the effect that this has in our economy and how much we count on these ports every day. Now, what's going on right now with frankly, a mismatch between supply and demand, plus a generation of not investing enough in our ports, it's added up to this moment where we're playing catch-up. But thanks to these dollars, thanks to these investments, we're going to be able to catch up and resume American leadership economically, which is so important because, we have competitors out there on the world stage, especially China, that have been investing this whole time. We've got to make sure that we're not falling out of the lead, and that's what these commitments are going to allow us to do.
Secretary Buttigieg, one thing we learned here, history has taught us that the disruption after Katrina, several natural events that had an effect on the tributary system, how the rest of the country is dependent upon what happens in our port, especially in our entry waterways here for their supplies and their goods.
That's right, and we're seeing how vulnerable we are to some of these disruptions. Whether it's the pandemic, right now, obviously we're closely monitoring what's happening in the Russia-Ukraine situation. It can be half a world away, but it can affect us right here at home in a lot of different ways. That's why we've got to make sure that we have resilient ports, that we have infrastructure ready for the future. For example, in the last round of this same program that we're announcing today, we funded $2 million for improvements in Delcom, where they need to do a dock restoration project and establish an industrial fabrication facility at the port that can help them do things like refurbishing their docks, clearing debris, improving the slips, construction on the grounds of the port, all because we know that we need to have that kind of capability with more and more extreme weather coming our way. Look, these climate issues aren't theoretical anymore. They're not out there in the future. They are upon us right now, and we've got to fortify our infrastructure, whether we're talking about our what we call our marine highways, in other words, that river and tributary system you're talking about, or whether it's the coastal ports.
Many in the maritime industry say that not only do we need to refurbish and invest in our ports, we need a new super port to deal with these large containers, as well as improve our locking system. Are you guys also taking a look at that?
Yeah, when it comes to the locking system, I've seen locks that are in use now that were installed under President Roosevelt as part of the New Deal, and they were certainly the finest technology of the time. But it's not clear how we're going to make it into the 2040s and the 2050s if here in the 2020s we're counting on infrastructure from the 1930s and 40s. So we've got our work cut out for us. But we also have the resources to do that with. And as for the ports themselves, look, we have a system, a network of large ports and small. That's a good thing. We don't want to be counting on any one port at the expense of all of the others. But I do think we need to look at new capabilities that are going to prepare us for the next few decades that are going to look very different from the last.
But when it's one port at the mouth of one of the busiest waterways and busiest tributary systems, that one port has to have some precedent and special attention.
That's right. No, we see that there are some areas that we depend on so much that, if there would be a failure at that port, you could be in my hometown in Indiana and feel the economic effects, even if you didn't understand why. And that's exactly why we need to get these resources out there, and why I think the $450 million that we're announcing today. And by the way, that's just this year's round. So we will do this every year for the next 5 years. The president's bipartisan law lays out the opportunity to do that. Now, it's a competitive program, so the ports will have to come. There's so many good and worthy investments out there that the ports have to come in with their best plans, and then we'll fund as many of them as we can.
Well, we know you have to go. Thank you for this time, and thank you for being proactive when you talk about using African-American media to get the word out. And I know we don't have time to talk about it, but I know the initiative with many of the accidents and fatalities in the last 2 years on America's highway and transportation system. I know your administration is also taking a look at that. So anything you want to close out with for our listening audience?
Well, thank you for mentioning the safety agenda. This is very important. We have got to act on the number of deaths that are happening on our roadways and unfortunately, disproportionately impacting Black communities, families, and neighborhoods. It doesn't have to be this way, and maybe we can talk about that in more detail in the future. But we've got a national roadway safety strategy that I think is going to make a big difference, and it's a matter of equity as well as something that's going to affect everyone in the country. Wow. So whether we're talking ports or roadways, we're working hard here at the department, and I look forward to staying in touch about all the good work going on.
Well, we'd love to have you come back, one of the oldest cultural meccas in New Orleans in America, one of the most important tributaries and flow distribution systems in America. Thank you, Transportation Secretary Buttigieg. We appreciate you, man.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Absolutely.